going to give a really quick little intro here, and maybe a few more people will come in while I'm talking. I wanted to welcome you all. I'm Karen Stern from the library, and we're really excited to have Liz here tonight, and she's going to get going in just a second. I just wanted to let you know about another program coming up next week, next Wednesday night, actually, which also relates to how we are in this world and how our brains work in this world, which is a lot of what tonight will be about, I think. And the fact that we are very profoundly social creatures. And it's a book called Social: Why Our Brains Are Wired to Connect. It's kicking off our Commit to Your Community series, and the talk kind of explores how our social nature affects our happiness and well-being. It's part of this series that is all about connecting and the importance of connecting with our communities for both personal and communal reasons. So the speaker is Dr. Matthew Lieberman. He's a UCLA professor, one of the founders of the field of social neuroscience. So I think it's going to be a really interesting kickoff to our series. And if you would like to know more, I'm going to put the link to find out more about the talk, and you can sign up in that link as well if you would like. So I'll just put that in the chat right now. And then with that, I'm going to turn over to Liz Raymond. Very excited to have her here tonight. Thank you so much for coming and sharing all this with us for the next few weeks.
Yeah. Thank you, Karen, and thank you to everyone who's taken some time to join this evening for yourselves and in community, showing up together. You may not be able to see each other, but there is power when individuals come together with an intention. So tonight's intention is to maybe learn something. But before we kind of dive into that, I'll just introduce myself. I am a mindfulness and meditation teacher. I work with corporations, I work with communities, I've worked with all types of populations as well, from youth until we grow older in our time. I've taught all individuals what mindfulness can be and what it is, and it's one of my favorite subjects. And I'm curious that if you can see the hand raise feature or would like to enter into chat, I'd love to hear if any of you have practiced mindfulness before. If you've had any type of practice, even a little bit or a lot, I'm so curious to hear. And if you haven't, there's no room for judgment here. We kind of put that at the door. So glad to see some of you have touched upon this. So mindfulness is something that we will dive into, and neuroscience is one of my favorite topics and areas to study. And, we'll touch a little bit on the brain today. So today's is really the intro to mindfulness and how our brain works and everything that's going on there. And I'd like to kind of get us to begin our journey together with really thinking about what mindfulness is. Um, Yep. So, one quick note for housekeeping. If you look at your chat within the Zoom, you'll see the option to drop to who you like your message to go to. If you'd like to share your message with all, you can change it to all panelists and attendees, or you can send me a private message during our session, and I will work to answer that. But I'm curious if any of you would like to maybe take a moment to think about, what does mindfulness mean to you? And if you'd like to share that, what your definition is or what you might think it is, you're welcome to enter that into the chat. But what does mindfulness potentially mean to you? I like to start always thinking about our intentions. setting our intention to understand what mindfulness is. And this is one of the examples that John Kabat-Zinn has shared with us, someone that has studied for so long in this field and brought it into the field of science and medicine. And it is all these things: being present rather than distracted, being in the moment, present with no judgment, being aware of your surroundings and emotions. Yeah, it's about being like awake here. It means knowing what you're doing. And I always equate this to if you've ever driven anywhere at all, usually to work or maybe to a place or maybe home that you always go, you go on autopilot a lot of the time and we're not even aware of what happened on that drive. And we can do that in our lives where we're kind of going from place to place and we're just not there. You know, the word mindful means to remember. Most people who've read about it or have done any training, they understand and can appreciate the benefits. But the reason that we can forget to be mindful is because our brain's normal mode is to get lost in thought, to have this kind of internal narrative that's going on, that we're just talking to ourselves all the time, right? And we're having this constant switching from activity to the next. But mindfulness really is about maintaining that moment to moment awareness of like sensation of the body, feelings that we're having, and emotions. Because we know that a lot of the time when someone asks us how we are and we say fine, it's just kind of how we might walk through life is just fine. We're not really connected to the sensation of what's going on with us in our experience. So, with our practice, I'd like to offer you to just kind of go through tonight without judgment of self, or maybe anything else that someone might share, right? That's a key part of mindfulness is being in the moment, right? Being awake, and if you're driving, not judging that there's traffic, not getting upset, not worrying or feeling like you're late or other things, not judging it, but just being in it. And that can be very challenging because we are really bad at what we think is good for us, which is multitasking. Multitasking and the brain are in reality, um, they turn into stress in the body. It really does create a cascade of physiological responses when we're balancing things, right? So I just wanted to kind of point out some scenarios that, in our life, which can be very fragmented as we move from one thing to the next. Obviously, our situations are even more fragmented now, right? In our own homes, we're balancing many roles that we play in life. Whatever that role or stage of life is for you, we still are balancing a lot of it. And that balancing is reality, not really balancing, right? So let's think a little bit about an example that there's been studies shown when we look at the stress that happens in a typical workday in the brain. So we talk about having 12 ongoing different working spheres on an average day that we have to shift into. We may spend 10 and a half minutes per task before we task switch. And we may spend about 30 minutes per sphere per day. So we are being tasked with so many, if you want to say sphere or role or thing we have to do. And we get numerous interruptions throughout our day, whether it be from work or email, a call or news or something happening. We're just constantly interrupted. And that's kind of becomes the normal. So we respond to stress like this with multitasking, which equals more stress. We can end up being continually interrupted where it takes 30% more time to complete our tasks. I can definitely tell you I am someone when I'm in my kitchen, I've got drawers open. I'll open the fridge. I'm running from one thing to the next. My fridge is still open while I'm stirring on the stovetop. It's just a place in my life where I have to really work to be mindful. Being mindful in every sphere of our life, it's not always possible. This is not about perfection. This is about just starting to become aware on your journey. Where could you look at the mindfulness in your life and maybe work on a sphere of that, right? So, this is not about changing everything about you, but looking into things about how you could feel less stress, more productivity. And when we are interrupted and we can't complete tasks, it can take 10 times as much energy and focus after our interruption to get back on it, to get back on task. So think about the energy drain we may feel or burnout, and we wonder why. Like, why am I burnt out and it's 1 o'clock? Well, our brain is tired and it is telling us to like stop. And so that's kind of what happens is that we can get kind of caught into this multitasking. And what happens in the body is a physiological response that just kind of kicks up. And we can get a feeling of not keeping up, pressure, which leads to all kinds of things. And I don't want to be doom and gloom, but I just want to paint that picture of like the worst case scenario, the days that we have where we're super stressed out. Maybe other days we're balancing more because we are able to be in the moment. We're doing tasks that we enjoy. But we all know that there's a lot of things in life that we have to do that are just part of it. So, what happens? Why is this stress and why does this response happen in the body? Well, if any of you watched the news last week and might have seen the jaguar that was, or the cougar that was chasing the hiker that was going for like a run. Well, the brain is very smart, but the way that the body reacts to things outside of it, so external, anything external, stressor, we turn on our fight or flight mechanism. So, whether it's the cougar chasing us and scaring us to death, or it's the stress overload from multitasking, from doing the work and doing the things, the same cascade happens in the body. The same. Until we can work to help our brain really discern what does it need to fight or flight over? Does it need to run from the cougar? Does it need to run from the work, or what can we do instead of responding? And the brain is able to change over time no matter how old we are or where we are in our life. The brain is able to learn, it's able to be flexible and to change. And you may have heard many studies about with mindfulness you build the capacity to do that. And so we can learn many skills throughout our life. We learn how to cook a new recipe or try a new sport or read something new and learn something. So mindfulness can do the same thing for our brain on stress. It can help us learn a new way and create a new path. So what happens in the brain is we take in this external, and this lovely part of the brain called the amygdala reacts because that cougar is pretty darn scary. Um, when we're on super stress, the challenge is that we can't really get calm and discern on our own. We don't have that capability. The response within our body and the cascade of hormones takes over. So we don't really have a choice. And we react out of habit. We can be reactive, or we might take what they call like the low road, like a quick, terse response sometimes. Or maybe someone challenges you and stresses you out, and it's hard to communicate, or someone cuts you off while you're driving. We react, stress. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. This isn't about really shifting all the things in life and taking away all the triggers. That's not reality. But when we are on stress or multitasking or fight or flight mode, it cuts off our ability to remember, our memory, to learn new things. So it's really important for us to really just kind of understand that sometimes it's not your fault that we're not able to stop the brain at times. No one's ever really told us how to focus. I love this comment here. A teacher makes over 1,000 quick decisions in one day. Well, teachers tell their students, I need you to focus, I need you to pay attention. But who's ever taught them to pay attention? When have we ever been taught to pay attention, right? So, mindfulness is about kind of getting a bit more control over that response by building a more mindful brain. Instead of the amygdala being the reactor, we strengthen our brain in the prefrontal cortex, which is the executive center. It's the wise, the advocate that just says, that's not a cougar. That's just a picture of a cougar on a PowerPoint. Or, that's a work activity. I need to take a breath. It's fine. So if we look at this diagram here, we've got this reaction, and when we have a more mindful brain, we may find ourselves activated by external, but we're able to calm it. And we're able to keep it within a range where our body's stress response does not react the same way. So we are more deliberate, we're more thoughtful, we're more strategic with the things that we say or we do, and we have the ability to react in a better way of what we feel better. It's all about how we feel. That's really about getting to a place where we're less driven by our emotions and the things outside of us. So before we practice today, before we experience some mindfulness, let's walk through what is mindfulness and what are the ways for us to begin to practice it. So we talked, each of you had shared a bit about your feelings of what mindfulness and your definition. And so for our practice today, we're really going to embody this definition that mindfulness means paying attention in a particular way, on purpose, in the present moment, and non judgmentally. Each one of you has an innate sense of mindfulness. We just do as humans. This is how we may interact and be mindful, and just when we have a moment that is moving to us, of joy, of laughter, of sadness, of love, like we can be so mindful in that moment, or when we're looking at a sunrise, a sunset, like we're able to be captured. We have an innate sense and it feels so good. But life happens. And there's ways that we'll need to infuse it into our day to day life, just like if we need to get stronger and go to the gym and kind of work our muscles versus just going for a walk. Our muscles get stronger when we actually do the repetition and we do the practice. And so there's mindfulness sitting in meditation, which is very challenging to some, but it's also very possible to have very small bits of it. And so we'll just practice for one moment and then we'll finish and begin our practice together. So, a mindfulness sitting meditation is all about finding an anchor. So, I invite you to just maybe place a hand, if you're able to, on your upper chest area, kind of, if you feel comfortable, to close the eyes or soften your gaze, just anchoring your hand here and just being there to feel one full breath in and out coming through the nose. Feeling the weight of the hand. I invite you to use this anchor throughout your life, in between running from here to there, when you're in your car and feeling a certain way, or having a conversation with someone that might stress you out or make you feel a certain way, but to remind yourself by placing your hand here and using it as an anchor and just feeling a breath or two. A mindfulness sitting meditation may use that breath to concentrate and to be with that breath over and over and over, just experiencing our mind for what it is. And we also have the ability to practice in our daily life mindfulness. And that can be when we're going out for a walk, looking at all the leaves, exploring and looking for things you haven't seen before. In our eating, brushing your teeth, you can just be there to feel the water, to feel the toothbrush, and to taste the toothpaste, and to notice the sensations when you're brushing your teeth, like being with it. You can do that every day for 2 minutes, morning and night, and begin to practice to show up in the most small, seemingly mundane ways. But it's about you paying attention in that particular way, directing your attention to the toothbrush, to your teeth, to the toothpaste, to the present moment, checking in with what's going on in the mind when you're brushing your teeth, the heart. What are you feeling? And the sensations of the body. And doing it without judgment, not thinking, am I brushing too long? I'm not doing this right. Just being with it. So let's go back to our anchor. And yes, the symbol of an anchor can be something of weighing down, or it could be something of grounding you and reminding you, right? Like if you've ever heard of a worry stone, or maybe holding on to a pendant that reminds you of someone or something. This anchor is to remind you of your breath. And so let's all find ourselves just in a comfortable seat wherever you are. If you feel comfortable and want to place your hand on that anchor, or if you would like to anchor in the abdomen and feel your breath there, and gently closing the eyes or softening the gaze. And begin to awareness on the abdomen and the belly, feeling the breath as it comes into the body, watching what happens in this space. Can you feel an expansion on the inhale? And watch what happens as you exhale, just placing awareness in the abdomen. Perhaps you can feel the temperature of your hand or the fabric of your clothes from this pressure. Something you might not have noticed if you didn't tune in. And begin to raise that awareness to the upper chest and the lungs, feeling the inhale and what happens when all that air comes in, what happens to the body. If we have a sensation, trying not to get caught in it and noticing and simply letting that go so you can go back to watching the breath. And raising your awareness to the nostrils, can you feel the breath at all coming in and out? Maybe even the slightest sensation. Let's take a few more breaths together, breathing in through the nose and watch the breath travel through the body. Get curious. And on your next breath, deep in, filling up the lungs. Imagine filling it up with light, this feeling of lightness. And as you exhale, just letting everything go. And maybe gently bringing a little bit more of awareness to the body if you want to move anything or open your eyes. The breath is deeply connected to the mind and the body. We can control the stress response by connecting with the breath and simply watching it. It will slow down our response system. It can help that calm, centered area really be our set point. And we don't need to do this in 45 minutes or 20 minutes a day to really see the benefits, but increments throughout your day. To just notice the breath that goes on in the background over and over with usually no attention paid. Whatever you're feeling, whatever it might be, using your anchor to just reconnect you to the present moment. In the present moment lives joy at times and happiness or feelings of content, release, relaxation. And we're not worrying about the what ifs or the what were's. We're just here together in this moment. And throughout this series, if you do join in, we'll continue to talk about these benefits, how we can practice in other ways to, help us in other aspects in our life, not just stress. It's an easy one because I'm sure we all have felt that at times. But there's ways to use mindfulness to bring joy and to compassion and energy and creativity into your life. So it's not all about the fixing of things and the needing to change, but more about how can we make our brain stronger? How can we feel better and make that movement from this reaction, this emotional reaction to the things that happen, this automatic, we can't control it, to something that is about emotion, a pause, that anchored breath, and our conscious reaction to whatever we're experiencing in our life. So before we wrap up our time this evening, and it feels like it was too short for me and hopefully was inspiring for you to maybe think about one activity that you can try each day to show up for fully. And maybe that's doing something if you have a family, to do something with your children to get them to be mindful when they're brushing their teeth or playing or trying something new to eat. But see if you can commit to doing something once a day. And for those of you that come back to the next session, I'd love to hear what that was, what that experience was. And if you'd like to share, I think sharing is great because we put it out there, and hopefully that means we might try to stick with it even for a day or two. So if you'd like to share, maybe in the chat, is there one thing that you might try to be a little bit more mindful of in the coming days? And to wrap up our time together, thank you for coming here in community and sharing in our practice today. This is just a beginning snippet into other practices that we will do where we'll use the body scanning technique to find kind of settling in, um, compassion, and working with mindfulness to feel more energy in our life. So, again, Karen and Bridget, thank you so much for inviting me to this community to share. And I welcome questions. If you have them, you can always reach out to me, to Karen, or we will hopefully see you next Thursday, same time, same place.
And
Um,
thank you so much.
yeah,
I will be sending out another link next week for all of you who sign up. We look forward to seeing you again. We're so glad to have had you here tonight, and we look forward to more, Liz.
thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening, everyone.
And you.